today. I'm going to show you that it is super easy and so simple to make your own sourdough pizza crust. If you're new on my channel, my name is Anya and I love sharing our simple heritage homemaking and homesteading journey with a lot of recipes just like this one. And without further ado, we'll get right into it. So to a bowl, I'm simply adding 3 cups of flour, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of yeast, and then I'm just going to give that a quick stir to mix the dry ingredients. And I'm adding 1/4 cup of fed ripe sourdough starter. If you're using my method, you can use your discard, you can use any sourdough starter that you have, it really doesn't matter so much for this recipe. 2 tablespoons of olive oil to make the dough a little bit more elastic. I like the flavor of olive oil. And here I have about 3/4 cups of warm water. I'm just adding about 1/2 cup for now. Everybody's flour is a little bit different, and because I'm using volume measurements, they're not quite as exact as weight measurements. And I'll put that into my food processor with a dough hook attached. And first I knead it on very low speed just to incorporating all the ingredients. And I can already tell that the dough is a little dry, so I'm adding the remaining 1/4 cup of water. And if you're doing this, you may have to scrape down the ingredients from the side. I would go gradual on the water because sometimes it is easy to overhydrate the dough, so you want to err on the side of just a little bit too dry. You want it sticky but sort of staying together and coming off of the dough hook, which at this point it is not quite doing. So I'm scraping down the ingredients and going to the bottom. I know that there are different dough hooks these days. Mine is maybe 20 years old, so it doesn't have that little scraper attachment on the side. This one is just a very simple dough hook. And of course you can totally do this by hand on your work surface and just knead the dough to activate the yeast and to get the gluten developing. This is feeling really nice. And then I shape it into a ball and place it into a non-reactive bowl. So I'm just using a glass bowl here covered with my beeswax wrap and place it in the refrigerator overnight. This is pretty much 24 hours later. So sourdough, I always like to think of it in 2 ways. You can either just make a sourdough recipe because you like the flavor. Sourdough gives recipes a more complex flavor, and it doesn't necessarily have to be sour, although a lot of people love the sour. So if you want that, you're always looking at a longer fermentation and a little higher ratio of sourdough starter to your other ingredients. But then there's also the health benefits of sourdough because sourdough pre-digests the gluten and makes it a little bit easier to digest for us humans. And if you're just looking for the complex flavor, you can get away with letting the sourdough crust, the pizza dough, sit and ferment in the refrigerator for about 4 hours. If, like this is January, if you have a very cool kitchen like we do, you can probably leave it out on the counter. If you are looking for the health benefits, I recommend that you let the sourdough ferment for at least 8 hours, and I did a full 24 hours. So let's see what it looks like. I have my beeswax wrap on top. It is not entirely airtight, so there is a little bit of airflow underneath it, but it keeps critters out, and it keeps, for the most part, keeps other flavors and aromas and whatever else might be swirling around in your refrigerator out. So here it is. It has nicely risen. What I think is especially fun is looking at the bottom of here because I got this big air bubble there. So now this is actually ready to go, and I'm just going to show you how I roll it out, how I divvy it up, and I'll show you various different ways of how you can bake the crust or the pizza, including the toppings. So again, we want the dough to be somewhat sticky, but not so much that it actually sticks to your hands. It has sweated a little bit here in this bowl. And with this amount of dough, what you can do is you can make 2 pizzas that are a little bit of a thicker crust. We personally love the really thin crust, so I'm gonna cut it in 3 portions, and I'm really bad eyeballing, so I might weigh it out. If you're an eyeballer, you can just cut it in whatever thirds you think is right. And if you're more of an accurate baker, you might weigh out your pieces of dough to make sure that they are the same weight. We'll try this. This is, for this metric girl, 267 grams, and this one is 237, and this one is 220, so I'm just going to cut a little bit off of this one, transfer it over to this one. So now we have 239 over here and 249. So that's good enough for me. I think they're pretty much even. Now I'm gonna put just a little bit of flour on my working surface here because I don't want the dough to stick. And then I roll it out. Of course, there's these really talented Italian bakers who can swirl the pizza dough in the air and create this ever-growing pizza dough. I'm not that, so I need a rolling pin. But it's actually very simple to roll out an evenly round shape. So now, depending on how and where you're going to bake your pizza, you can bake it in a big cast iron skillet, which is the method that I'm going to show you. You can also put it just on a regular baking sheet, like a cookie sheet, or you can bake it on a pizza stone. So depending on what you're going to bake your pizza on will determine how big you want to make your rounds. I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger because I want it to fit into my 2.5-inch cast iron skillet. And once you've gotten this far, it's essentially like any other pizza crust. Again, you can bake it on a pizza stone, you can pre-bake it and then freeze it. You can also bake it in a cast iron skillet, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. I will preheat the cast iron skillet, and because our stove has a very powerful broiler, I will turn that on just in a moment, not quite yet. Over here I have some tomato sauce for the pizza that my son made just earlier today. I set him to the task. I said, hey, can you make a tomato sauce for the pizza? And he said, sure. So here it is. And then I have some mozzarella here that is already pre-sliced. However, I don't necessarily like the pre-sliced because the slices are a little bit thicker than I usually like. However, it takes the extra step out of this recipe. And another thing I like to do with my pizza crusts is add just a little bit of olive oil to the top. That will prevent your pizza dough, your crust, from getting too soggy. So just brush that on. That's just my personal little thing that I like to do. You can completely leave that out. I just turned on the broiler in my stove. And if you are doing the cast iron skillet method, it's always a good idea to have your ingredients ready to go, because once the cast iron skillet is really hot, it will start baking the crust. So you want to make sure that it's not going to cook all the way through while you're gathering your ingredients. So you want to have everything handy. Ooh, this drips a little bit. You can see that this is already smoking hot. And let's put this pizza crust in this super hot cast iron skillet. Put the tomato sauce on. And mozzarella. And now we're ready to pop this in the oven. It won't take long. So with this powerful broiler, it's probably going to be somewhere around 7 minutes. So let's see what the pizza looks like when we pull it out of the oven. Nice. I hope that you can see this very beautiful brown crust. We will transfer it to a plate or a cutting board. And this is your pizza. Watch this video because I'm going to show you 2 other pizzas that I absolutely love. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a like, and if you're new to my channel, hit the subscribe button so you never miss another video. And if you're wondering how you can make your own sourdough starter, I have a video here, and then I have another video in which I show you my super simple, easy sourdough maintenance method with no discards and no feedings. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.